Hello.
Hi.
And
can I
welcome.
admit something embarrassing? I have been having like wrist pain and I was like, what is happening? It's from holding our microphones.
Because it is heavy. I literally cut myself below the screen where like you can't see it. I try to hold it with two hands because this thing's freaking heavy. And also I've noticed my left arm is so much stronger because I have so much more stamina to record like this than I do with my right hand. They are bricks.
We need to sort out the microphone stand situation.
We do need to do that. And then also we need to just like think about our form and not having limp wrists as we hold it.
Or maybe we're strengthening. This is,
or maybe
if
we're
you
just
want
getting
strong
stronger.
wrists, start a podcast.
It's so funny because I had messaged Morgan and Taylor from Creeps and Crimes. Well, we messaged them in our group and we were like, what the heck do we do about mic stands? Like, you guys seem to have your shit together with the mic stand. And they're like, oh my God, it's impossible. These microphones are so freaking heavy. And they're like, oh, well, you just have to figure out which arm you want to be the strongest because that's where we all end up. Unless you're sitting at a table with one of those really short stands, it's hard to find one that can actually reach and hold this brick.
I think fall of 2024 is going to be once we are settled into our spaces and have like a setup, we'll have microphone stands. But because we've been moving around so much and you've been doing construction on your house, we're not set in one spot. So we've been moving around a ton, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. We have the whole summer of my maternity leave to like figure out the office space in my house and how we want to sit in it.
You guys know what you know what you signed up for.
This is better than what it has been.
That's true.
The only promises we're making are to ourselves, Sabrina. No one else is expecting any of this from us.
That's true. But we appreciate all of you for being here with us. I know you were about to introduce us when I confessed my weak wrists.
This is Two Girls, One Ghost.
2 girls, 1 ghost. And we are your ghostesses. That is Corinne, and I'm Sabrina.
I have a call to action for all of the plant lovers out there. I live in Zone 6, and this past winter, there was not a lot of snow, but it was very cold. And so what happened was, and this happened to people all over my town, because I've been, gossiping about plants with people as I meet strangers on the side of the street.
Plant gossiper.
Everybody's plants that they had in their yards that were like 18 years old or like 30 years old died because there was no insulation from the snow to keep the roots protected. So the frost would just go down and kill the plants. And half of our plants are now dead, which normally you shed a tear because you're like, that's so sad and that's so expensive to replace. But I'm kind of like, whoa, did you hear that? There was like a burp that rumbled up and it sounded like a dinosaur call. I wonder if the mic picked that up. If it did, Jamie, keep it in. That was crazy. But I'm excited because it gives me an opportunity because they're mostly in front of our house on the like colder area, I guess, where we got the most wind. It gives me the opportunity to pick some new plants. So I was kind of thinking like a rhododendron, that sort of like some sort of flowering plant, like a lilac, something like that. But I want suggestions from people because you plant in the fall.
Can you tell everyone what happened to you yesterday?
Oh my God, I was so mad. I went to, what the fuck is it called? Something like that. And I've been there before and they have such good selections and I am at this moment very pregnant and very unable to do much movement. But I really used all my muscle and like all my best squatting form and I collected all of these plants for my house. And I went to check out and they gave me back my Amex and they were like, we don't take Amex. And I was like, no problem. I have Apple Pay. We don't take Apple Pay. And I was like, no problem. I have my Visa memorized. They're like, we won't take that unless we can see the card. And I was like, really? Fuck you! I didn't say that, but I felt like that.
You had
and
a
I felt like crying.
Cart.
I had a whole cart. And also, normally I would have just been like, oh, that's frustrating, whatever, and leave. Well, I did internally. But I was more frustrated and on the verge of tears because one of the women that worked there was really mean to me. So I was already on edge because she came up to me and she was like, that's okay. She was like, you can't plant those. They're not ready to be outside. But like said it in a very rude way. I also didn't know that she worked there. She had no identifying information and she was a bit older. So, sometimes people just like come up and start talking to you. So I just thought we were striking up conversation. So I was like, oh, really? And she was like, well, why would I waste my time standing here telling you this if that weren't true? yeah, you can't plant this. And I was like,
Also, like,
okay,
can we have a conversation, please? Let's not be snappy and rude. And also, like, okay, like maybe you wanted that opinion, but it could have been delivered kindly. Like, it's at the plant shop. Maybe tell me how to take care of it until I can plant it rather than being
it was very
snappy.
aggressive right off the bat. That's why I didn't think she worked there at first, because if she had, I would have thought she would have been like, oh, by the way, just so you know, like we'll probably get another frost or whatever. So if you were planning on putting these outside, maybe wait a few more weeks.
Right.
Or whatever. But she was so quick to it. And so I got a little snappy back and I was like, well, maybe it's a good thing I have a sunroom then, huh? They don't have to be outside, do they?
I would have just cried.
Like, okay. And got frustrated with me. And then stood there with me with my cart as the cashier checked me out. And then I was told that I couldn't pay for my flowers and run away. And so I was on the verge of tears. But right now, I will say I'm on the verge of tears most days. I'm kind of on the verge of tears right now. So it is what it is.
I will try my best not to set you off. I wish I could give you a hug.
It's unpredictable what will set me off. Brian literally asked me, he was like, are you going to hang pictures today? Just curious about like the tasks. And I was like, how dare you ask me what I'm going to do? Leave me alone.
Don't talk to me.
I was like, I need alone time, which means I need you to not talk to me for like 8 hours.
I feel like you have finally experienced every PMS symptom that I experience every month when I get my period.
I was actually thinking about that today because I was thinking about how rough pregnancy has been for me in the 3rd trimester and how my brain is just mush. Well, it really started like mid-2nd trimester.
Yeah.
But like my brain is mush. I can only do social things for like maximum 90 minutes. My brain just doesn't work. I'm like not reliable for any of our podcast work. Like things just go right over my head. I'm like,
You're
I'll do
getting things
that.
done. You're
2
doing
seconds
so
later,
much.
forgot I was supposed to or that I said I would. Well, but like in comparison, it's pretty bad compared to how reliable I've been in the past 7 years to now. And so I was thinking about it and I was like, my God, this is like truly rocking me right now. And then I was wondering when you're pregnant, Sabrina, because you do have a lot of these symptoms for PMS. I was like, either, not to scare you, but I was like, either they're going to be exacerbated and this is going to be like the worst thing in the world for you, or you're going to be used to them. And so it's going to be just another day in Sabrina's life, or everything is going to be the opposite and suddenly you're not going to have any of the symptoms.
That would be amazing.
I hope that happens for you.
I hope that happens for me too, but
yeah,
I have a feeling it won't be like that. Because every time, even right now, I have my period right now, but like the last week I've just been experiencing all of the side effects and like the symptoms and PMS and everything. And I forget every time. I'm like, am I getting sick? Like, is this my period? Am I just going through a bout of depression? Am I like, I don't know, but I experience it every single month. And yet it shocks me every single month.
Someone the other day asked me how my first trimester was because we were on tour. And I was like, to be honest, I have no idea of what I was feeling. Like half of those symptoms were pregnancy because I didn't know for a little bit of it that I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I was like, and we were traveling so much and we were going on 3 hours of sleep. And Sabrina was right there with me the whole time. We were symptom to symptom, tiredness to tiredness. I was like, I had zero comparison that I was experiencing anything different than Sabrina.
Yep.
So when we find out that you're pregnant in the future, we will start batch recording probably the second we find out so that you can take maternity leave and not be crying in your last 8 weeks being like, we have to record another 30 episodes.
I think we've also learned just like from all of this to just be ahead at least a month moving forward. Yeah. And now it will be so much easier.
You never know what's going to happen.
Because we're already kind of there.
Right.
And we're used to it.
And now we're close. So we can record whenever.
Leia's going through, I think, a like teenager angst phase right now. Because she's a little bit chonky, I had to put her on a diet.
Oh.
And so I changed her food and she's not, but it's good. She's not like going crazy. She doesn't seem like she's hungry all the time. But when I give her canned food, she's like not eating it, but then she'll meow for it. And then I truly have to put it into her mouth, like open her mouth, put the food in her mouth. And she does this like as if she's gagging and then she'll eat it and then she'll go and eat the rest of it. But I have to force feed her first.
What in the world?
I know. She's just being
What
stubborn.
is this?
I don't know.
Did this just start? Is this
rebellion?
Do you think in part because she's in a new place in the move, or did this start before? When did she go on the diet?
Truly, I did a lot of change all at once. But I'm also slowly transitioning. I have like some of her old food in with the new food. And
Poor Leia.
you know what? She's being spoiled. She's still very, very spoiled. There's no poor Leia in this situation.
I think we've all experienced the emotions she's feeling, though.
Yes.
Well, let's pivot off of us and onto something else.
Okay.
This is a regular Sunday episode, which means we research haunted places, haunted stories, or just strange things out there and tell you about them.
And this one was inspired by a stop on the tour.
It was.
An unexpected stop on the tour.
An unplanned stop on our 2023 tour. And so being a podcast about the dead, we often talk about the dead and death. But oftentimes I feel like a lot of the stories that we cover involve war or diseases or quarrels between lovers and historical figures and that sort of thing. But this episode is going to talk about death by another manner, and that is death by a force so strong it is bigger than any person, and that would be Mother Nature. And I'm just now realizing I'm choosing a lot of stories recently that involve natural disasters or Mother Nature killing people.
And specifically water disasters.
What does that mean for me?
I don't know. Stay away from waterfalls and rain.
Don't go chasing waterfalls?
Don't go chasing waterfalls.
I'll stick to the rivers and the lakes that I'm used to. So it'll be good. Okay, but we are going to discuss Niagara Falls, which
Woo!
we went to. Woo-woo.
We did. An unexpected pit stop.
On 2 hours of sleep.
This is maybe the most wild thing that happened on tour, and it was a weekend one.
Well, we were up at like 2 a.m. or whatever to get on our flight that was at 5 out of Toronto to get to Pittsburgh.
Because there was no direct flights.
No. And as our luggage is boarded, Sabrina's boarding group is already called, right? Like, I think I was like 1 or 2 groups behind you. And as you're getting ready to get in line, you get the alert on your phone saying your connecting flight has been canceled.
But I didn't even get an alert. I literally, luckily opened the app and just was looking at our next leg, and it said the next flight. It just said canceled. We didn't get any alert. And I was like, excuse me? You didn't get an alert either. And I look at you and I go, Corinne, I think our next flight was canceled.
And this is why we would be so good at The Amazing Race, because we didn't question what to do. I think I just immediately said, we got to pull the bags. Let's go.
Yeah.
And then you went up, talked to the gate agent. You were like, we have to get to Pittsburgh. Our flight was canceled. She goes, say less, grabs us, grabs our bag, runs us through these secret tunnels. And then we rented a car.
And then I remember speaking of the woman who was kind of snappy with you at the plant store, I'm not the type of person where if someone says something rude to me, I don't snap back. I usually just like cower inward and I'm like, I can't deal with this and I get sad. But I remember I was getting our bags, you were getting a rental car, and like the bags weren't coming. So I had to go upstairs to up to like the desk to talk to them. And I'm like lugging some stuff and I'm getting out of an elevator. And there's this man waiting to get onto the elevator, but he starts getting onto the elevator before I get off the elevator. And I think I was looking down at all the stuff that I had. And he goes, maybe if you weren't on your phone, you would see where you're going. And I was like, I've never snapped so much. I said, excuse me, I'm actually the one getting off the elevator. So you should wait for me to get off before you get on. I'm not even looking at my phone.
Good.
And I was proud of myself.
God, people are so cranky.
Yeah.
Everyone just take a breath and mind your own business. This is getting me riled up. I'm getting mad.
Right?
Who is that guy? Let me see him. Find him for
Who is
me,
he?
Sabrina.
Let me give him a wet willy.
Oh, God. I'd wet willy the shit out of him.
Me too.
Makes me mad. I'm sorry you had to go through that.
Okay, we survived and we would crush on Amazing Race. And we stopped
would.
at Niagara Falls.
And so on our journey, we were like, hey, as we cross over the border of Canada into the US on our way to Pittsburgh, let's go see Niagara Falls. And so we did. We took an hour to wander around Niagara Falls and it was incredible. It was both of our first time there, right? You hadn't been
No,
before.
I've been.
Oh, you had been. Okay, well, I'd never been and it was wild.
Mm-hmm.
And then as
So
we were
cool.
walking up, I was like, I should do an episode on Niagara Falls because I think a lot of people died here. And then basically the whole time we were walking, I was reading the Wikipedia page about everyone who died at Niagara Falls. So it was a little grim, but
also
I was intrigued.
That's just who we are. So
yeah.
nothing new.
So in the northwestern area of New York, right on the border of Ontario, Canada, is a group of 3 waterfalls that collectively are called Niagara Falls. And they sit at the end of Niagara Gorge. The largest of the 3 is called Horseshoe Falls, and it straddles the international border of the US and Canada. The other 2, American Falls and Bridal Veil Falls, exist within the US border. And there is also a bridge named Rainbow Bridge that divides the American and Canadian side. It's appropriately named because every photo I've seen of Rainbow Bridge, there's just a rainbow that's cast from all of the water right there. So it's super, super beautiful.
I just imagine being original settlers and coming across this. How horrifying would that be?
Oh my gosh, I know. Well, and there's a ton of evidence that the Native people lived here for a long time. So I feel like typically they had a lot more respect for the nature around them.
Sure.
And probably were a little bit more used to kind of like the chaos that the waterfall could create and the danger that it could create versus some of the European settlers / colonists who came and were like, whoa.
It kind of reminds me of the moment in, is it Land Before Time, where they get through the cave and it opens up and they see the beautiful waterfalls?
Yes. Is that not the same scene where the mother dinosaur dies?
Oh, I don't remember that part.
Oh, I think Ducky's mom dies or something. Or who's Ducky? I don't remember. No, Littlefoot's mom dies. Sad. Anyway, we're talking about Niagara Falls.
Yeah.
So there's a cluster of islands between the falls that allow tourists to go out and view the waterfalls from the middle of the river, which I believe we did. I think we went on to the Goat Island section to view the waterfalls. So I do love that we went to Goat Island because this is 2 Girls, 1 Goat.
Of course.
So how appropriate.
Apropos.
The beginnings of Niagara Falls were formed originally 10,000 years ago when there was this glacial ice sheet that melted, and over thousands of years, it started filling up these large basins of water, creating the Great Lakes. And then the falls themselves were formed by the water curving into the gorge, basically, like just like carving it out. And this created Niagara River, which drains Lake Erie into Lake Ontario, and then it continues on until it dumps into the Atlantic. But because of the sheer amount, like the sheer volume of water that moves through this area, the 3 combined falls have the highest flow rate of any waterfall in North America, and Niagara Falls consistently ranks in the world's top most dangerous waterfalls. So if you look at any list, you Google world's most dangerous waterfalls, it's somewhere between like number 2 and number 7 every single time.
Jeez.
Around 5.9 million cubic feet of water dumps from the falls every minute. And humans, we have taken advantage of this sheer power of water. And we have used it by creating a hydroelectric power plant to harvest some of the power of this moving water. And actually about a quarter of the electrical needs for the state of New York and for Ontario is powered by Niagara Falls.
I mean, that is crazy. That also just proves how powerful it is. I also think it's incredible that humans have figured out how to circumnavigate that power.
I know. I don't understand it. When I was in Iceland, I tried to understand like geothermal energy renewal sources and how they do it. And now it was all over my head. But I was like, that's incredible. And we should do that everywhere we can.
Someone commented on our invisible string theory episode on YouTube saying something like, I thought I was coming here for science, something like that. And I was like, what about our podcast has made you believe we would come here with scientific knowledge ever?
I mean, if that was on YouTube, it had to have just been someone perusing around who's never listened to our podcast.
Right.
But I feel like the first clue before you comment, perhaps the first clue would be to look at who's posting it. And if it's called 2 Girls, 1 Ghost, maybe go, oh, that's weird. That's probably not a science channel. Click on it and then go, oh, shit, that's definitely not a science channel.
Mm-mm. Not at all.
I mean, we added a little sprinkle of science into there.
Yeah. But a lot of it's just like theorizing and trying to figure it out. We don't have any knowledge.
No. And all of the scientific, I guess, quote unquote, like facts that involve the invisible string theory are theoretical science. So it's not, there's nothing to be proven or told. Okay. And I'm sure as all of us are aware, this is a huge tourist destination. I'm sure most people in the world have heard of Niagara Falls because it is one of those places that are like a bucket list item for many people. And so I thought I'd provide a couple interesting facts beyond what I think is already super interesting that I've said. But the very first recorded couple to honeymoon at Niagara Falls, Aaron Burr's daughter.
Stop.
Aaron Burr, sir.
Trend center.
I know. I mean, they were the first recorded couple, so who knows how many people came before. They were obviously notable historical figures being related to
so it's recorded.
VP Aaron Burr.
Yeah.
So it was recorded. Pam and Jim from The Office, they timed their
I always
nuptials
think about them.
under the falls. Yes. And impressively, Niagara Falls actually played a huge role, or I shouldn't say huge, but did play a big role in the Underground Railroad, as slave owners would travel to the falls for a sightseeing opportunity, and they would usually bring a few of their slaves with them. And this gave the opportunity to the enslaved people, those who could, to try to escape up to Canada.
Oh.
They were in the north. There were other people that were working to help them. But then unfortunately, there were probably just as many people who were like the slave hunters, slave capturers, also working there to try to bring people back. So it was obviously convoluted and complicated and not just easy to run away around the falls. But there was opportunity for a lot of people to escape their captors up here, which is awesome. But it wasn't always a sightseeing opportunity. Niagara Falls was not. In the 1870s, people actually had to pay to see just a little glimpse of the falls because people got greedy and they were like, oh, let's bring commercial development and industrialization to Niagara Falls and try to chip away at this natural beauty. And so because of that, it wasn't really easy for people to go see the falls. It was not like the tourist destination that we can experience today.
Right.
But also because of that, people were like, okay, well, this is totally threatening the existence of the falls. And so a conservation movement was led for the next several decades, and public parks were constructed as a result. And to help restore Niagara to its sacred state, they would limit how many resources were used, how much we take from the falls, and also provide people safe access to view the falls without negatively impacting the ecology and topography of the area. And on the American side, this was the very first state park ever established.
Ever?
Which is very cool.
In the U.S.?
In the U.S. Yep. First state park.
That's cool.
Also, people could go look at the wonder of the falls.
I will say, from having seen it on the U.S. side and the Canada side, I do think the Canadian side is the better view.
Yeah, that's what everyone says.
Yeah. Or doing one of those like boat tours where you get a poncho and you go kind of like as close as you possibly can to the falls. That
scares me too much. I don't think I could do that.
See, I like that better than being above. Being above it is scarier.
Oh, because you could fall over.
Yeah.
But then I'm thinking about like the churn of the water. It's like a little washing machine. Like if you fall in, you're kind of fucked most of the time. And then if you're like, oh, yay, I lived and I'm just floating downstream, there's this other part not too far. It's like a mile down, which is like no one survives that if they get into this one section because it just drowns you immediately.
Well, just don't jump off the boat, Corinne, or don't get pushed off the boat.
Well, I'm thinking of like the boat capsizing. I think I'm scarred from that one duck boat tour in like Chicago or Wisconsin or wherever.
Oh.
That was a few years ago. It's a boat made to do that and it went down.
Don't go chasing waterfalls. That's what we've learned.
Don't go chasing waterfalls is the lesson of this story. So while the falls have always been viewed as a perfect example of force and strength that Mother Nature has and to not mess with planet Earth, some people have tested their luck by venturing a little bit too close to the falls, or in some cases, voluntarily rolling over the falls in barrels.
Where did that come from?
I don't really know why they chose barrels, but I will tell you about the first people who attempted to do this. Okay. And so for this episode, we are going to discuss or dive in. Get it? Water puns.
Pun intended.
Dive into some of the strange and some downright heartbreaking stories of some of the deaths or survival stories of people who have gone over the falls. And then next week, we're going to uncover some of the hauntings that exist within this area.
Okay. I have a quick side tangent question. Did you ever do that science experiment in like middle school or high school where you had to create a contraption for an egg and drop it off? The egg fall. Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you use? And did you succeed?
I did succeed, and I was freaking great. I used pieces of paper, but I mimicked kind of like the bedrock of the earth. And so I had different layers of like different textures and crusts. So I had a bunch of flat, I had some crumpled, I had some like that I cut in strips and made them like kind of squiggly. And I just kind of kept doing that in different forms all the way up so that there were different layers of cushion, and it worked.
Okay. What did you use as like the parachute? Or did you not do a parachute? Did you just drop it?
We did not have a parachute. We were just dropping freaking eggs from ladders into our thing below.
Oh, you dropped it into your thing below. The way we did it was you create like basically a hot air balloon situation, a basket for the egg, and then a parachute, and you drop it in the contraption to see and try to protect it.
Oh, maybe we did do that because I'm remembering taping plastic straws to my egg. So I must have had some sort of parachute.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did yours crack or did you survive?
Mine survived.
We're a bunch of survivors over here. Who says this isn't a science podcast?
We've taken science classes before, therefore we have scientific knowledge.
I've actually taken an embarrassing amount for how dumb I sound on this podcast when it comes to that topic.
We've done a lot of schooling and still sound dumb.
Whatever. We're relatable.
Yeah. We're experts when it comes to the paranormal.
Yeah.
And our expertise is limited.
Barely.
Yeah.
Guys, we just enjoy coming here. Is that not enough?
We're having fun.
Okay, so this week we'll talk about deaths. Next week we'll talk about hauntings, I guess, and some of the deaths. But in an unsurprising yet disturbing moment in history, the very first recorded public stunt occurred in 1827 when a wrecked schooner named Michigan, so basically it was a sailboat named Michigan that was not being used as a sailboat anymore, was loaded up with effigies of people and animals, which to my knowledge were living animals, and placed on the schooner that was placed on the river on track to go over the falls as this like stunt because humans are fucked up. And of course people would be like, come hither, let's all see the animals plunge to their death and pretend like we're on there too with our little paper mache people.
I hate that. It's one thing to do like the fake effigies, but to actually put living animals.
Kind of happened a lot. I think it was like one of those things too where, we still do it. Think about all the freaking lab animals. It's so, the animal testing, but it's like, you know, you send a dog up into space before you send a person. So you send a dog over the waterfall before you send a person.
Come on, there's humans who would volunteer for this shit.
There are, yeah. And some people did. Okay, so this was an actual event where people would come and watch the boat go over with the animals. And people were charged 50 cents to come see this event. So it wasn't just like, you know, a bunch of guys being like, "Ooh, wouldn't this be funny?" and pushing it over the edge. Like it was an advertised event that people would come and watch.
I mean, if you think about back in the day, like people would go and watch executions and stuff. So
yeah.
Humans are pretty sick. Yeah.
Right. And so there was something about this event which just must have inspired a few more humans to be like, oh shit, people will come and watch things fall over the side. And perhaps they'd pay a pretty penny to watch me fall over the side. And so begun a string of daredevils who flocked to Niagara Falls to show their strengths and endurance and test their luck.
Okay.
Enter Sam Patch. He called himself the Yankee Leapster, but he also accepted the nicknames the Daring Yankee and the Jersey Jumper.
I like Jersey Jumper the best.
I know. It does sound fun. So Sam, he was a Rhode Island resident. He grew up in Rhode Island. He grew up working in a cotton mill. He was a child laborer. And when he and the other children were not working in the mill, they would entertain themselves by jumping off of the mill dam and like jumping from high heights. And so he
the original parkour.
Yeah, they're so dangerous. As if he wasn't already in danger as a child working in a factory. He was like, let me leap off of the mill building and into this freaking dam.
Okay.
So he clearly had no fear, and that moved with Sam as he grew up and entered his 20s. In his 20s, he moved to New Jersey to work at another mill, but his love of jumping off things, it just never died with his childhood. No, instead, he would perform stunts all the time, and he realized that he started to kind of gather crowds of his own, and he could charge for these events, and he could be more than just this mill worker. He could risk his life all the time and get paid for it. So
I mean,
he was
if
like,
you have no fight or flight, if your amygdala is like, what's that guy who did the Free Solo, that documentary? You know, if you have that,
Yep.
I guess you kind of do need to take it more extreme to
Yeah. What's his
feel
name?
something.
Alex something. Yeah. Sometimes you just
Yeah,
don't fear death. And Sam did
sure.
not. And so in New Jersey, in his new state, he jumped from 70 feet into the Passaic Falls, I think is how you say it. And he survived. So he was like, oh my God, I can keep going higher and higher. I can do this all the time.
Mm.
So in 1829, Sam said to himself, you know what will draw a really big crowd? If I set up a 125-foot ladder over the river from Goat Island in Niagara Falls and jump off of it into the water. And so that is what he did.
Is that a custom? That's got to be a custom made ladder.
It 100% was, because they actually had to like live reconstruct part of the ladder. Because so he scheduled the event. It was set on this one day and people gathered to watch Sam presumably jump to his death. But it was kind of a shitty day out. And so not a ton of people, a lot of people came, but not as big of a crowd as Sam had expected.
Not as many as he wanted.
No, exactly. So he was set to jump at noon. And right before he was about to jump, it was like 11 a.m.-ish, a chain that secured the ladder to the cliff, it snapped. And so they had to rebuild kind of like part of the ladder and the chain to secure it again to give him a walkway out there. And they did it within the like next 4 or 5 hours. And so now Sam was jumping at 4 p.m. He was more than 80 feet in the air. So this was the tallest jump he would have done so far in his career. And a crowd of people were all around him, some cheering, I'm sure some holding their breath, awaiting his death. And everyone watched as Sam walked out and he leapt off of the plank and into the water below. Everyone looked at the water where he entered, and you could see the bubbles rising to the surface. But for quite a bit of time, there was no Sam. And there was a rescue boat that had been set up to grab him, pluck him from the water. And it was circling, and there was no Sam. But then after what feels like a little bit too long for Sam's survival, in a small distance away, he does resurface. And everyone's cheering because he's alive. And the crowd is like going wild. And Sam is like, this is great, but the crowd could be bigger.
Right. He's like riding this high and it's never enough. He keeps chasing it and it's going to lead to something very bad. I can tell.
It is. So he decides he should do it again, and he schedules another jump for October 17th, and this time he will jump from 40 feet higher. So it would be 120 feet high. 10,000 people showed up to watch, and Sam survived again. He survived the jump.
That's a lot of people.
It's a ton. But then just a few weeks later, he decided, I'll do the same thing that I did in Niagara Falls, a place that should surely kill me, and I've succeeded twice. I'm going to do the same at High Falls in Rochester, New York. And it was November 13th, Friday the 13th, and he jumped and he never resurfaced. But that did not dissuade other jumpers, other stuntmen, from venturing to Niagara Falls to try to do the same.
Well, I mean, he survived in Niagara Falls. So, of course, people are like, well, it was the High Falls situation. It wasn't Niagara Falls.
True. On October 24th, 1901, Annie Edson Taylor became the first woman to go over the falls and the first person to go over the falls in a barrel. This was for a publicity stunt, again, and she hoped she would survive. And to test if she would survive, she first sent her pet cat over
Annie
in a barrel. I know. Not the cat lady you thought she was. She sends her cat over in a barrel a few days before the cat survived. She's like, great, then I'll survive too.
Okay, well, I'm glad the cat survived. That's so sad.
I know. Also, it was at this point in my research too, when I was like, okay, there's been so many animals that have gone over, like the cat surviving. And then I started thinking about the fish that are in the stream and have to go over Niagara Falls. So I Googled it and I was like, how do the fish survive? And basically, the majority of the fish do survive the fall. There's the white foam that kind of like is created by the churn of the water at the base of the falls provides enough cushion that 90% of the fish who drop survive.
Wow.
That's still a lot of dead fish.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Wait, that's a fun fact. I like that a lot. I also am now thinking about the fact that there's a bridge called Rainbow Bridge, and I know it's because this rainbow that's formed over with all the water particles and stuff, but for how many animals have died here, I do like the idea that there's this rainbow bridge that helps them cross over.
That's very sweet. I didn't think about that. That's really lovely.
I needed something positive.
Yeah. Thank you for your contribution, Sabrina. That was great.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so Annie's cat survives. 90% of the fish survive. Things are looking good for Annie too, right? And so she gets her big ass barrel And a crowd is gathered, and she squeezes herself into this barrel, which isn't really squeezing herself. Like, it's almost the same height as her. And she's riding through the rough waters in this barrel until she goes over the side of Horseshoe Falls.
Which is how tall again?
It is 170 feet, Horseshoe Falls is.
Okay.
Big drop.
Massive drop.
And also, it's not just like a drop and then you just like gently float away. Like, it's a drop. You probably are underwater getting churned around for a little bit underneath the falls. And then hopefully, you hope you pop up somewhere.
Right.
So the barrel pops up and they go and they try to retrieve the barrel and they grab it and they crack it open. And Annie's alive. She's miraculously survived. She's a little bit bloody, a little bit cut up, but otherwise she doesn't have any serious injuries. Truly, it seems like a miracle. And people are cheering. And Annie, she's like, what the fuck did I just do? She literally said, quote, no one ought ever do that again. So she was traumatized by it. She wasn't like, yay, I survived. She was like, guys, don't do what I just did.
I'm so curious about Annie now. I'm like, who are you? What led her to this point in her life? And does she need a hug?
Yeah, I think she was a school teacher, if I'm remembering correctly.
That is not what I expected at all.
I think she was. There were some other people that were just like making some odd decisions. Like soon after her, there was a man named George Stahakis. In 1930, he decided to go over in a barrel with his 150-year-old pet turtle. And George died, but the turtle survived.
In that one, I'm like, I feel like George hit his head on the shell of his turtle or something like that. Like, I feel like he's just an idiot. Not to speak ill of the dead. Just
People
don't do
should
it.
not be doing this. Yeah, no.
Nobody try this at home.
What is your purpose? Again, it's like, why?
Yeah.
But the next daredevil after Annie's miraculous barrel roll to take on Niagara Falls was Bobby Leach. Bobby would be the second person to go over the falls in a barrel. So this predates George and his turtle. While Annie's barrel was much more like, it looked more like an oversized wine barrel. Bobby's was this metal tube. It kind of looked submarine-like. Annie, I did right. Annie had been a school teacher, but Bobby, he literally performed with the Barnum and Bailey Circus. So like this was his jam. This was his stage. He had experience.
That seems like the appropriate segue into Barrel Falls.
Right. Yeah. I don't know what was going on with Annie's life either. But if there was someone to survive doing this stunt, it would be someone whose literal job every day is to do stuff like this. And clearly death did not scare Bobby. Bobby was so unafraid of death that actually he had literally seen a fellow stuntman die from diving off of a 150-foot platform into a 5-foot deep pool of water, which of course that person would die.
Right.
And Bobby sees this man die and just immediately does it right after. Just fearless. Death doesn't scare him. Clearly he's unaffected by other people's deaths. He jumps in. He survives that. So he's like going over Niagara Falls in a barrel. I'll be fine.
He's getting a little bit cocky.
Yeah. He's brave. He's delusional. He's a bit of both. Well, poor Bobby, he did survive his metal barrel fall over Niagara Falls. He did, but I'm sure there's moments that he wish he didn't because he spent 6 months recovering from how many bones he broke. Like he was crumpled up. Like he was kind of a mess. So metal was not the way to go.
Yeah. That doesn't seem like a cushiony situation.
No. And then Bobby died in his late 60s after slipping on an orange peel.
Stop.
He hurt his leg. His leg became infected. He needed surgery on the leg. Okay. And he died of complications from gangrene and the surgery. But it all started with slipping on an orange peel.
For someone who's lived such a dangerous life to die from slipping on an orange peel.
It's like the cruelest turn of events.
Jeez.
Okay, so clearly jumping off of the falls and surviving is quite the stunt. And it seems some people found it possible. But there are other daredevils who took advantage of the dangerous terrain without jumping over. It was simply about crossing over. So enter the tightrope walkers. Suspended, this is like such a circus. Niagara Falls is a circus. Suspended in the air, tightrope walkers would cross over the gorge near Rainbow Bridge. And the first to do this was French daredevil Jean-Francois Blondin Gravelet. He did it 8 times in total in 1859. And during one of his walks, he even carried his manager on his back, like piggybacked his manager across the tightrope.
And there's no harness or anything?
No. I would literally never do that.
I think I would rather do that, though, than the barrel.
I agree. But I would never be, as a manager, me in my managerial position, as a human being, being in the manager's position, I would never trust anyone to piggyback me across a tightrope.
No.
That's just a hard no. That's not I have to do this in order to survive. This is my one chance. That's voluntary.
Right.
He's voluntarily.
And you have no control. Yeah.
Right. Making that decision. But they survived. This guy did it 8 times. The next person who is notable to mention is Maria Spelterini. She was the first and only woman to cross over the Niagara River Gorge, completing the stunt multiple times within the same month and even doing it blindfolded, one walk. And then she's like, oh, I succeeded doing it blindfolded. Let me up the ante. And so then on another walk, she freaking had her ankles and her wrists handcuffed to hinder her balance. She makes it across. So she's like, how do I make this even harder? Clearly, my balance is too good. So then she is like, well, I'm going to make sure that I can't use the grip of my feet. So she has peach baskets tied to each of her feet so that she can't use her like toes or feet to grip the tightrope. She just truly has to rely sheerly on balance. And she did.
Did she do it?
She survived. She lived. She did it. Yeah.
I have no comment. This is just like,
it's hard to comment.
I
It's
cannot
so unrelatable.
Yeah, at all.
Okay, so in modern day, it's completely illegal to do anything like this. Crossing over the falls, intentionally falling over the falls, it will result in a hefty fine. But sometimes, just sometimes, special permission is granted.
Like when?
On June 15th, 2012, high wire artist Nick Wallenda, he got special permission from both the Canadian and American governments to walk a tightrope across the falls. Other tightrope walkers had crossed over the gorge a bit further down the stream, but he wanted to go right across Horseshoe Falls. And so he set up a tightrope that was 1,800 feet in length. So it was 550 meters for those of us who don't live in America, everyone else in the world. And he would do all of this unsupported. So actually, that makes me question if the other tightrope walkers were supported. They might have been. They might have been strapped to something.
Okay. Interesting.
I'm unsure. But Nick
Okay.
definitely was not. So he successfully walked across it, thank God, and he became the world record holder for longest unsupported tightrope walk in history.
Jeez.
Now, we've talked a lot about the stunts that people pull to go over this, but there unfortunately are some other cases where people accidentally go over. There are cases where people intentionally jump, knowing that their likelihood of surviving is very slim.
I feel like of the intentional ones, there are less deaths than I thought there would be, which is fascinating.
There are a lot of deaths, even with some of the intentional ones. Maybe I just plucked a lot of the survivor ones.
Yeah.
But it is kind of crazy because you would think that way more people, like the fact that some of these people did it so many different times and survived too is pretty wild. So in modern recorded history, from 1850 to 2011, there's been an estimated 5,000 bodies to have been found at the feet of the falls.
5,000?
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's just from 1850, like as an estimate. Imagine how many people before then.
Before that, yeah.
An average of 20 to 30 people die going over the falls every single year. And I saw some reports saying it was more closer to like 20 to 40.
Jeez.
So
Goodness.
I'm going to tell you about one of the cases that is terribly tragic, yet still miraculous. And this is the Miracle on Niagara. And Sabrina, you might recognize this because as we were walking down the path, I was reading it aloud to you, the story, because I was like,
basically doing our podcast, but in person without recording it.
100%. I've already done this episode just on the fly. So on July 9th, 1960, James Honeycutt took his friend's kids. In some articles, James was listed as a family friend. In other articles, he was listed as the uncle. So I don't know if he was the uncle or if he was like an uncle to these kids, but he took these kids, 7-year-old Roger Woodward and 17-year-old Deanne Woodward, brother and sister, out on his aluminum fishing boat for the day because they were going to spend the day fishing on the river. How lovely.
Which sounds lovely.
It does. Unfortunately, during that time, the boat lost power and they were kind of picking up speed going down this river and they couldn't get to the side and they couldn't do anything to try to grab on or like scoot themselves over because the water was just a little bit too strong. And so they're quickly approaching the edge of the falls and there's no way to safely go to shore and they're all freaking out. There's a group of tourists nearby and 2 of the people, they make their way to the river's edge and the boat is actually close enough now that they're able to reach out and grab the girl. So they grab Deanne, the 17-year-old, and they pull her from the boat to shore just 20 feet before the edge of the waterfall.
Jesus.
But they don't have time to grab anyone else. The current is too strong. The boat is ripped away immediately, and down shore they go and over the waterfall. Roger and James fall. This is over Horseshoe Falls. So this is the 170-foot drop.
Yeah.
Roger, the 7-year-old, had been wearing a life jacket, and that choice saved his life. James, unfortunately, passed away. He was drowned and just didn't survive the fall.
Mm-hmm.
But Roger became buoyant. And the Maid of the Mist, where Pam and Jim got married, came over and they were touring the bottom of the falls. It's one of those boats that like gets very close to the falls. And they see this and they make their way over to Roger, floating in his life jacket, this little 7-year-old kid, so terrified. And they pluck him out of the water to safety. So truly a miracle.
Did he break any bones or anything?
Not that I saw listed, no. I'm sure he probably had some injuries.
Wild. Jeez.
Yeah, I have no idea, but I'm so glad both kids survived. Like, obviously, it's terrible that the adult passed away too, but just the children, the brother and sister, that they didn't have to. It's traumatizing enough to experience that together and traumatizing enough for the girl to watch her brother go over and think he's dead.
And not know.
And for him to go over himself. Thank God they both survived.
I know. Oh.
So Niagara Falls, it does get a lot of attention for its beauty and for its strength and for the sheer number of lives lost beneath its surface. Water is also said to be a medium between the physical and spiritual worlds.
Yes.
So it comes as no surprise when I tell you Niagara Falls is most definitely haunted, which we will talk about next week.
Dun, dun, dun. Wow. Okay. So do you know, is there like a number of how many people have died at Niagara Falls?
The number of bodies is around 5,000. There's no like
that's
actual
the estimate.
Tally and marker. Yeah. That's for like the body of water and like bodies found there. But the surrounding area, there was a bunch of wars. It played a big role in the war of...
Sure.
I'm not going to spoil next week.
Oh, okay.
There's dead bodies around the land as well.
Makes sense. Okay. Well, I feel like the lesson here is don't go
chasing
falls
waterfalls
in a barrel, and don't go chasing waterfalls. I really did think more people would have died from going over in barrels.
I would implore everyone to Google some of these deaths recorded at Niagara Falls, because there's a big list that's recorded for different people, like in their boating excursions, or like there was one man who not too long ago, within the past couple decades, he was like, I'll just kayak my way over the falls and make it to my dinner reservation. And he just died. Like he didn't make it. So there's a lot of cases there's a lot of people who didn't make it. I just plucked out some of the ones who did that were doing really odd and interesting things when going over.
Okay. Well, yeah, don't go chasing waterfalls and maybe just stay inside. We don't have any listener stories from anyone who has experienced hauntings at Niagara Falls. So I picked a different type of waterfall.
Okay.
And this is a story from our listener, Ashley, and it is called My Experience in Black Star Canyon. Hi, ladies. I just started the podcast and I'm absolutely loving it. This was back in 2019. So I won't say I hope you're still with us, but I do. And
it always sounds like we're saying, I hope you didn't die. But what we mean is perhaps you're still a listener, and that would be great.
That would be great.
We also hope you're alive, but it does come off a lot darker than intended.
I feel like it's appropriate. Okay. I came across the Haunted Anaheim episode and I just had to write in. I live 10 minutes from Black Star and 20 minutes from Disneyland. I laughed when you ladies were asking who would go to this place, and hey, it's me. I would go, and I have gone. When I was 16, my friends and I took a night trip to Black Star to check out what the deal was with this infamous place. I want to paint the picture for you the best I can. So you turn onto the canyon road, which is paved, and there's rolling hills both ways on either side. There's a gate that is closed and locked at night, so you have to park and journey in on foot. So when we arrive, it's pitch dark out in the canyon. So the only light you have is flashlights, and if you're lucky, maybe a full moon to illuminate the creepy valleys. We walked deeper into the trail and found another group out there, so we decided to join forces and explore together. It's important to stay on the path because everything off of the path is private property, and apparently there's a big rumor going around that if you're on their land, the residents will shoot you. So we stayed on the path.
Yeah, good.
And we came to an old mine shaft doorway. The door was closed, but there was a light that was rigged on top to signal entry. This light was motion censored, so when we walked up, it flashed. We thought it was pretty spooky, but nothing more happened. As we continued deeper, the road started to narrow and change into a gravel road. We crossed over a creepy bridge where a legendary witch lived below next to the creek. Off to the left in the field is a lone water well. The well looked like it was straight out of The Ring, and none of us were brave enough to approach it.
I wouldn't ever want to look at what's at the bottom, too, because even if it's nothing paranormal, it's probably like a dead possum or something.
There's definitely something in there.
Open, uncovered.
Yeah. We come to the end of the public road and a gate that states past this point is private property. My group decided that was enough for us and we wanted to head back. But the other group we met continued to hike to the waterfall and the notorious school bus. Side note, on the bus, people have not only reported hearing the children, but also seeing handprints on this window of the bus. And I can't remember this episode specifically, but I think there must have been a big school bus accident and the bus is still there.
Oh, it's starting to ring a bell.
I know. It was so long ago.
Yeah, I don't want to guess at the details, but it is feeling familiar now.
We headed back to the car and came to the bridge again. And as we're crossing this bridge, I had a weird feeling, and I heard this sound from under it. I can only describe it as a deep, feminine exhale. The kind of sound you hear in a horror movie. And this is the bridge above where the witch is supposed to live.
The witch is near.
My friend grabbed me so hard right at the moment, and I asked if she had heard what I did, and she did. So I was not imagining it. We didn't speak of it while we were in the canyon and continued to cling to each other for the rest of the walk. We again came upon the mine shaft that we had seen previously, and the light flashed again when we walked past. So we were like, okay, probably motion censored. But the weird thing is, though, as soon as we were away from it, far enough away from it, the light flashed again a couple times. And that other group was not behind us.
Interesting.
Well, that makes me think like the witch is following them.
Right. Because if there's whispering and phantom lights, could it be the witch stalking them in the woods?
When we made it to the car, the first thing I did was ask my friend, okay, so what did you hear back there? And she described the exact same sound that I had heard. We got chills and we hightailed it out of there. Another friend from my group told us later that night that he went out there once and there were shadow figures jumping around from hill to hill. I've also heard people coming into contact with Black Star Bill, who lives in the canyon and doesn't like visitors. He will chase off trespassers, chase people in his red truck, and threaten people not to come back. I'm thinking Black Star Bill's a real human, but I don't know.
Maybe. I don't know. Also, the darting shadow figures running through the woods reminds me of one of our first episodes where we did Caught on Tape, and you covered the photographer who has captured a lot of different paranormal photos. And there's that really creepy one where it's like the backlit
in the trees,
woods. Yeah. And amongst the trees, you just see a bunch of dark shadow figures lurking.
It's super creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Ashley says, I haven't been back there since, other than when I drove up to the gate last Halloween to show my roommate, but no way in hell was I getting out of the car. Thanks so much for reading. I hope you ladies do a live show in SoCal soon. Stay spooky this Halloween and see you on the other side, Ashley.
I wouldn't go into those woods, Ashley.
No.
And it sounds like you were given every warning to not return.
I wonder what that other group who they split up from ended up experiencing.
Yeah. What if Ashley's group was experiencing kind of like the lights in the distance and the of the woman's voice, but the other group was the one actually being stalked? Like they were hearing someone or something stalk the other group a lot more closely.
Oh, interesting. I prefer that because then Ashley's in the clear, but it does sound
Ashley's
to
safe.
me, to me, it sounded like this witch under the bridge was following them.
Yeah. Oh, to be the witch under the bridge. Honestly, I kind of like that.
That is what we channel a lot.
I see nothing wrong with this woman.
We are team witch under the bridge, not team go over the waterfalls in a barrel. And I think that's fair.
Exactly. And did Ashley come out alive? Was her group safe? Yes. So
Yes.
team witch under the bridge.
That's way more relatable.
It sounds like there's a lot going on here, though. I feel like sometimes I feel brave after episodes and I'm like, oh, I would go there. Oh, should we go there? I'm not saying that with this one. No, thanks. Not
You don't
me.
want to go to Black Star Canyon?
I don't. I really don't.
Well, I don't want to go over Niagara Falls in a barrel, so
Okay. So we're
I
both
think
leaving
we're
this
in
episode
agreement
with,
here.
with
Shake
some
a hand.
boundaries
Make a deal.
of what we're willing to do and not willing to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
We're on the same page. If you've been to Niagara Falls and if you've experienced any hauntings, generally, whether it's at Niagara Falls or anywhere, please email us your encounters to twogirlsoneghostpodcast@gmail.com. That is listed in the show notes. It's also featured here on our YouTube channel, if you are wondering. And it's on our website, it's on our Instagram, it's on our socials. So you'll find it if you look.
if you look, just put in the effort, you guys. And if you weren't already putting in enough effort by listening to this episode and listening to it the very end, the last 2 minutes, we ask one more thing of you, and that is to tell people about us because it does
Pyramid
help.
scheme.
And then you've officially been sucked into the pyramid scheme that is Two Girls, One Ghost, where you tell 2 people about us and then they tell 2 people about us. And then we just have more and more and more and more ghost stories to talk about.
And who doesn't love to get sucked?
Yeah. So get sucked, baby. And also rate and review.
And thank you so much to our editor and producer, Jamie Ryan, for editing and producing our audio and video of our podcast. Thank you to all of you for listening.
We hope you enjoyed the science podcast, and we will see you on the other side.